Mam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tito Jayo Dire Nishta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashuki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Nigamal Kalparu Galitam Param Shukam Makaram Vitadravi Samitam Nityam Bhagavata Sevayam Hora Hora Sikabhuvi Bhavakaham Krishna Sadama Pagate Dhamagini Karo Nashta Dishamasha Paranako Dunodita Tamapia Dabhishuta Vishutam Vibhu Samapyayana Biram Bidocharim, Prakyahidahu Mahorari Tamaram, Sensation Abanam, Usanti Nanyadam, Savayapum Samparo Barma, Eto Bhaktira Haitiki, Haitiki Padiyati Yatma Shu Prasidati. Hey Krishna Karuda Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jigapate Gopisha Gopika Kantara Kantuna Mostute Jayatam Saruto Pango Mama Mater Matergati Matsavasha Parambo Jaradana Madana Mohano Seeman Rasa Rasa Rambi Vamsi Bada Carson Benishan Urbaka Gopinata Sriyasram Divyad Brindaranyaka Padrumada Srimad Radnagara Shima Sanishto Shri Sri Radha Shila Govinda Deva Prashtadavihi Seva Manishmanami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Taya Chajikaditaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Nama Mangalang Magavan Vishnu Mangaram Gurudadija Mangalam Padarikaksho Mangaraya Tanohari Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate Om Mahadevi Vidmahi Vishnu Padnita Dimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate Mahadakshmi Namastubhyam Namastubhyam Sare Sari Hari Priya Namastubhyam Namastubhyam Dharire Taptikanchana Gaurangi Radha Vindavaneshwari Vishavanusute Devi Pranamani Hari Priya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhakti Padanta Shamitana Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pachari Nirvishesanyori Paskata Desana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindam. It's Motivational Monday. I'd like to thank Brent and my Bobby, Namamrita on Facebook, as well as Rob here on Zoom. Last time, Wisdom Wednesday, we talked about how one should not think of a Vaishnava as an ordinary person. One should not think of the deity as being made of marble or stone. One should not think of devotees as being of a certain caste or background, certain ethnicity. And one should not think of Chaturmita to be ordinary tap water, but rather it's considered to be the Ganges River, which purifies one of one's sinful activities. If one thinks of any of these transcendental items in a normal, mundane way, the word is jata buddhi. Their intelligence is hellish, and it's not very likely that they're going to get out of the cycle of samsara anytime in the near future. The Vaishnava culture itself is transcendental to goodness, passion, ignorance. The whole Gunamatamatichanti Dehi Deha Shamubaram. The whole material world is moving under the influence of these three general modes of nature: goodness, passion, ignorance. Ignorance is laziness, misguidedness, violence, lack of self-control, animalistic addictions. Mode of passion is city life, basically getting ahead, technological development, improving one's standard of living, surrounding oneself with material comforts. And mode of goodness is plain living, high thinking, in a word. Mode of goodness focuses on the spiritual self, poetry, philosophy, pure eating, pure speaking, pure thinking, pure existence, with the aim of curtailing one's sojourn in this material world and going back home, back to God. If someone has those latter priorities in the mode of devotional service to Krishna, in the mode of goodness, in devotional service to Krishna, the mode of goodness is called sattva gun. The mode of goodness elevated in the service of Krishna is called vishuddha sattva, extremely good. In fact, so good, so pure that it has no longer anything to do with even the material mode of goodness itself, what to speak of passion and ignorance. If one is born even in a family of dog eaters, chandana, shropacho, and by social standards, by cultural norms, is the lowest rung on the ladder, the lowest of the low, but is seen to be chanting the holy names of the Lord, offering one's vegetarian food to the Lord before eating it, keenly interested in associating with devotees, then that person is considered to be the best of the Aryans. Aho bhatta shrapacho yogani yajjivagre. Jivagre means if you see the tongue of a person engaged in chanting the names of the Lord with sincerity and with devotion, then it doesn't matter that that person may have taken birth. That person's body may come from the lowest standard from a cultural point of view. That person's considered to be the best of all the Aryans. That's how powerful the processes of devotion. They're not meant just to elevate one from ignorance to passion and then from passion to goodness. This was clearly established by Haridas Thakur. There was a Brahmin, a caste conscious Brahmin, who commented on the constant chanting of Haridas Thakur. Basically, he said, so you're getting a lot of pious credits by all this chanting. You're going to be living on the heavenly planets for many, many years to come. Well, this is one of the offenses. One should not consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the pious ritualistic activities as the Vedas karma kanda. That is an offensive mentality. And Haridas Thakur said, I got not elevation to heavenly planets, but I got liberation from birth, death, disease, and old age altogether with the first glimmer of progress, the first glimmer of purity in the chanting of the holy name. Worldly prosperity on the heavenly planets, even liberation itself, are simply byproducts. They come about in the beginning stages of chanting the holy names of the Lord. There's a period of time in the early morning before the sun's up, before everything becomes clear. But there's a transition, nevertheless, that's taking place. The dark no longer seems foreboding. You can be up and about at a certain time early in the morning when you're no longer worried about stepping on snakes and scorpions in the dark, when you're no longer worried about robbers and dacoits breaking into your house, when you're no longer feel that creepy feeling that maybe there's some ghosts out and about. There's a time, it's before the sun has risen, but the darkness is gone, and all the fears and the things that go bump in the night have also disappeared. That's the pre-dawn hours when the sky has just lightened up a little bit. The dark is still there, but it's not as impenetrable. All your fears go away. You're excited. Your consciousness is fresh. You're ready to throw yourself into yoga or meditation or reading to purify yourself, to gird yourself for the day's activities which are to come. Haridas Thakur said, comparatively speaking, you get mukti, you get liberation from repeated birth and death, you get all the perks of living on the heavenly planets, you name it, yogic perfection, all that comes before the holy name actually rises within the heart. In the pre-rising moments, every material desire, karma, moksha, dharma, moksha, is fulfilled before the sun of the holy name makes its, in the early morning, the sun, there's a lightning, there's a lessening of the darkness, and gradually more and more lighting. Then you'll see just that little sliver of the sun peeking up from the eastern horizon. Then it becomes more and more full. So before the sun of the holy name even rises in the heart, one is considered to have attained liberation, attained and a goal beyond all of the demigods. Of course, one has to be careful not to backslide. One has to be careful not to retreat from the practice of consistently chanting the holy names and seeking after the association of devotees. But assuming that one doesn't fall off the wagon, assuming that one stays on the wagon, one is already liberated, one is already more than the demigods. Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion, a Vaishnava who is following the four regulative principles, obeying the order of the spiritual master, taking prasadam, associating with devotees, chanting japa and kirtan on a daily basis, is on the platform of immortality. That means they will never see birth, death, disease, and old age again, provided they continue doing what they're doing. It is possible to fall off the platform of immortality and become materially conditioned again. Prabhupada said the difference between me as the bona fide acharya, the guru, and my disciples is that I will never fall down, but the possibility is there for them. Nevertheless, it can be said of every disciple, they're a pure devotee, they're immortal, they are beyond the perks of liberation, what to speak of elevation of heavenly planets, of course, with the understanding that they don't fall down, with the understanding that as you are now, you will continue to be. Again, when Haridas Thakur was taken into a prison one time, all the prisoners were looking at his effulgent form from behind their bars. They immediately recognized him as a great saint, and it's the custom of people in India to get blessings from great saints. Unfortunately, because the people haven't prioritized devotional service, they ask for material blessings from the saint. Good health for them, their wives, their children, prosperity, money in the bank. In this case, we can only imagine that the desire foremost in the prisoner's mind that they wanted to ask Haridas Thakur for and receive from him would be, you guessed it, they wanted to get out of jail. So they were focused on getting out of jail. And they saw Haridas Thakur, and you can imagine their spoken and their unspoken desires flew to him. They, at least mentally, because they were restrained from the bars, they probably weren't able to approach him physically and touch his lotus feet, but at least mentally they touch his lotus feet. And then you can only imagine their innermost desire was, please bless us so we can get out of prison. So you can imagine their shock, their dismay, their outrage when Haridas Thakur said, as you are now, my blessing is that you continue. And they're like, what? What? You're blessing us to stay in prison? They completely misunderstood. At that moment, they were focused. Their whole attention was on the pure devotee of the Lord. And they wanted to get the best blessing from that pure devotee that they could get. They just didn't know what it was. And when it came, they didn't recognize it. Because Haridas Thakur wasn't blessing them that they stay in prison. He was blessing them that as they were depending on, leaning on, praying to the pure devotee for the best thing that he could give them, he said, may you always be in that state of supplication. May you always feel yourself as helplessly calling out to the Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada said we have to chant heartfeltedly. We have to chant with the same yearning that the small child sings for the name of its mother. It wants milk, it's hungry, it wants the comfort, it wants the warm, nourishing liquid within itself that comes only from the breast of the mother. So when one chants, one has to chant heartfeltedly. And because the prisoners were heartfeltedly appealing to a pure devotee of the Lord, Haridas Thakur blessed them that the consciousness that you're in right now, may you always be in that consciousness. And of course, the ramifications of this blessing is that if you live in a Krishna conscious way, you will not only be freed from the prison of this material body, you will not only be freed from the prisons of this material world, you will not only be freed from the three modes of material nature, from the pangs of birth, death, disease, and old age, but you'll be freed from the material world altogether, and you'll go back home, back to God. So Haridas Thakur was not just giving them a pass, a get out of jail pass. He was giving them a get out of the material world pass. Brahmanda Brahmite Kono Bhagavana Jiva Guru Krishna Pashade Sai Bhakti Lodabi, after many, many births and deaths. Sometimes high on the evolutionary ladder, sometimes low, sometimes a demigod, sometimes a worm and stool, sometimes on the planet of Brahma, and sometimes in the hellish planets. Who knows how many births we've taken in this material world. It says that finally one gets the opportunity of meeting a bona fide spiritual master when one's hankering is sufficient, when one's frustrated enough with the problems of this material world that one looks to a pure devotee for a solution. Then Krishna makes himself available in the form of the pure devotee, and the pure devotee gives them that blessing by which they can solve all their problems and get out of this material world. And that's exactly what happened. So they were criminals, they were rogues, they were ruffians. Somehow or other, in that incarcerated situation, they set their eyes upon a pure devotee of the Lord who happened to be in the same place they were. And true to this scriptural verse from Chaitanya Charita, he did give them the formula by which they could finish up birth, death, disease, old age in this material world and go back to home, back to God. The problem was they didn't recognize. Not only did they not recognize it, they didn't appreciate it. They were outraged. Their understanding was superficial and self-centered, unfortunately. So although Haridas Thakur was offering the keys to the kingdom, they just wanted the keys to the jail. He was offering them diamonds. They just wanted pieces of broken glass. Shami Kitarto Shmi Baram Niyache. Just like Dhruva Maharaj, he asked for a kingdom greater than that of his Lord Brahma. But when he saw Krishna, when as a result of his penances and austerities, Krishna appeared before him, the appearance of Krishna before his eyes, purifying all of his senses, integrating them, caused Dhruva to be ashamed of what he'd asked for beforehand. All those material desires dissipated, just as the fog dissipates with the rising of the sun. So here in our Gajendra Lila, Gajendra is offering a lotus flower on high to the Lord. He's given up all other recourses, given up all other avenues of rescue. Stopped defending himself. He's not even struggling anymore. He's been pulling with the crocodile for 1,000 years by the calculation of demigods. He's not even struggling anymore. He's given it up. And he's offering prayers. He's offering prayers through his trunk, through his nose. Elephant is described as one who has no hands, called Hati. He has no hands. But his trunk is considered one of his hands. So when we in the human form do the Anjali Mudra, we put our folded hands together and we come before the Lord and we ask the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord, you have some service for me. Elephant's not able to put his hands together in the same way that we are. He doesn't have two hands. If he has anything that could pass as a hand, it's his trunk. And so the trunk is called Hati, which means basically the hand of the elephant, or Hasti. Delhi in the old days was called Hastinapur, which means the city of elephants. There were thousands of elephants that lived in that city. But the word Hasti comes from Hati, and Hati means without hands. So not being able to do the Anjali Mudra, put two 5-fingered hands together in a obeisance to the Lord, Gajendra did the best thing that he could. He took his trunk, which he used as a hand to pick things up, and he plucked a lotus flower from the lake there at the Trikuta mountain and offered it to the Lord. He stopped pulling on his leg, which the croc wanted to devour, and he plucked with his trunk from the muck of the lake a lotus flower and offered it, seeking the Lord's power. Krishna, the root of creation, the fruit of the Vedas, the absolute truth, who plays on his flute, the ever-existing youth. Your lotus feet are adored by Lord Brahma and Shiva, who will not leave you even for a beat. You're the ingredients of all creatures. Your features are unlimited, whether they have hands, claws, jaws, or paws. They're all your parts and parcels. Those who are smart, engage in your devotional service with all your hearts. You guard those who never depart from the hearth of your sheltering breasts. Lord, I confess I've messed up, repressed my service, failed the test. Uh, but I'm thirsty for your mercy, which is greater than my mistakes. Lord, in spite of my shame, I'm calling your name in the middle of the fight. Please reclaim me from the might of the crocodile's bite. This is a paraphrase prayers that Gajendra called out to the Lord. He makes a very interesting point in this verse here in the third chapter of the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He's saying that Krishna is the source of the demigods. Aham adirhi devanam maharishanam chasarvasham. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am not known by the sage, sages, and demigods because I am the source. Aham adir. I preceded the demigods. So that I am not known by the demigods, but by the power of the Lord, the demigods are able to manage this material world. And part of managing this material world is to provide vision, provide the elements by which the living beings can see, to find food, to find shelter, and to maintain themselves. So the Raja Samasti Sura, the greatest of demigods, is the sun planet. That is an expansion of Krishna called Surya Narayan. And the sun exudes its rays of light and heat throughout the universe. All seeing is dependent on the sun. Just like you might say all walking and all jumping and all running is dependent on the surface of the earth. It all takes place on the surface of the earth. Similarly, all seeing, whether it's by llamas or peacocks or fish or cockroaches or demigods, all seeing rests on the sun, the foundation of the sunlight. Without the sun, there's no seeing. And the sun is a servant of Krishna. Sun is created by and placed in the sky by Krishna. And the sun god is charged with Krishna by providing ubiquitous, all-pervasive sunlight without which the living beings can't see. It doesn't do you any good to have eyes in the darkness. You can have perfectly good eyes, but if there's no sunlight or moonlight or electricity, which comes ultimately from the sun, your eyes aren't going to do you any good. So the fact of our seeing depends upon the Lord. He creates and he sees the demigods, he sees the sunlight, and he sees the living beings. Now, the living beings, the instrument for our seeing is the eye, but without sunlight, the eye is of no good. Even with sunlight, but once the soul has left the body, the eyes are still there. You follow me? But there's no seeing. There's no seeing. I've been to several funerals recently, and the bodies are lying there in the coffin. And if you pry the eyelids up, the eyes are still there, the correa, whatever they call them, the retina. But as a beautiful girl or meal or a relative or a loved one passes by, the eyes don't see. The instrument of seeing is there, the eyes, and they're, at least for the time being, perfectly intact, but there's no seeing. And that means that the seeing is not done by the eyes, the seeing is done by the Atma, the soul within the body. As long as the soul was in the body, it looks out onto the world through the instruments that God has provided with the eyes. And the eye, so the Atma sees through the eyes see dependent upon the sunshine. The sunshine is coming from the sun god, who is created by Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. Now, let's take it one step further. If the Paramatma, there are two souls within each every body. There's the living being called the Atma, but the Atma itself can do nothing without the accompanying presence of the Paramatma. There are not one, but two souls within each living being. There's the individual soul is aware of the pains and pleasures of the body, Chaitragnam Chapi Mambidi. And for the individual soul, the awareness, the consciousness does not extend beyond this body. We know the pains and pleasures of this body. I don't know the pains and pleasures of Rob's body right now. He knows his pains and pleasures. He doesn't know mine. I don't know his. So we're conscious, we're eternal, we're full of light, cognition, but we're limited. So that Atma depends then on the Paramatma, the all-powerful, omniscient expansion of the Supreme Lord who accompanies a living being within the heart of living being. And there are many people who have perfectly functional, perfectly operative eyes, at least in theory. There's sunlight outside, but they can't see. They can't see. That is because the Paramatma has banned their seeing. The Paramatma has not given them the grace to see, has not sanctioned their seeing. Therefore, the title of our talk today on this Motivational Monday is that ultimately it's Krishna who is the seer. Ultimately, there's Krishna. Krishna creates the demigods who create the material world, the objects of vision. Doesn't do any good if you have sunlight, you have eyes, but everything is just a void. Everything is just like a white piece of paper. Then what's the use of seeing? So Krishna creates the demigods. The demigods create the objects of vision with all their beauty and all their variety, the trees, the sunsets, the mountains, the rocks, the cliffs, the rivers, the beaches, the suns, everything. The demigods are empowered by the Lord to create all the interesting visual phenomena of this material world. Then so that we can see those, there's the sun god, the king of all the demigods, who himself exudes sunlight to every nook and cranny. The sunlight is the basis, the foundation on which all sight is done by all different inhabitants of this material world and all different species. And then the eyes are the instruments through which the living beings inside each and every one of those bodies can look out through the windows of the soul and perceive various phenomena. And yet each and every one of those individual limited cognitive beings is itself dependent upon the sanction, the blessing, and the mercy of the Supersoul within the heart. If you want to trace it back, if you want to reduce it to the most elemental truth that's there, you can say with highest veracity that the ultimate seer is Krishna. It's him who creates, who maintains, who provides, and even sees everything. Even the demigods who create the objects of vision, who create the means by which we see. There is a demigod also in charge of the eyes themselves, who give the eyes the magic touch by which they can compose images which make sense and on which you can make life-saving decisions. Everything, all those demigods and all of their powers are themselves seen. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Param Sadapasanti Suryo. When we put last night we had the Sunday feast, and after the talk, and during the Nishringadev prayers, everybody comes up, they get a tika, and they get the blessing of the helmet on their head. So that verse, Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Param Sadapasanti Suryo Deviva Chaksaradam Yadvi Pashvo Panyavo Jagavam Samminite Vishnu Yaparamam Param. It says that just as the sun can see everything, there's nothing that is hidden to the sun because of its ubiquitous, all-pervasive sunlight. The sun sees everything. There's nothing that is hidden to the sun. So similarly, it is said that Krishna sees everything. He sees the demigods. He sees what the demigod sees. He sees what the demigod who sees what the demigod sees. He sees everything. Just like when Mother Yashoda looked in Krishna's mouth, she saw the universal form. And in that universal form, she saw herself looking in the mouth of Krishna. And in that scene, she saw the universal form in the mouth of Krishna. And in that universal form, she saw herself again, repeated infinitely. And she got dizzy and she said, okay, Krishna. She offered a babe, says, don't eat her. So similarly, Gajendra here is at that point where he realized that there isn't anything but Krishna. There's Krishna, and then there's the separated expansions of Krishna. There's Krishna individually, and then there's Krishna as Paramatma, and then there's Krishna as Atma. But really, there's just Krishna. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Anantarupam. There's one God, singular, indivisible, original, eternal, imperishable. But because he's omnipotent, there are no limits to his power. There are no limits to his expansions. And each and every one of his expansion has individuality. It can act according to his own discretion, his own intelligence. So Gajendra has come to the realization that the ultimate person who sees, maintains, and upholds everything, the ultimate person who has the on-off switch is Krishna. It's Krishna. The only reason the whole world wakens every morning, the demigods get up, the sun mounts his chariot and appears on the eastern horizon, and throughout the day rides his chariot from east to west and disappears from our sight at the end of the day. The only reason any of that happens is because Krishna's got the switch on. And if Krishna were to take his little pinky, like he lifted a mountain, and turn that off switch, the whole universes will become null and void. The whole universe will become null and void. This is what Arjuna was feeling. Tavai Danash Aishaba Sarati Ashte Saham Rati Narupataya Tamar Sarvashanem Tanabudashiri Bajram Kukam Hiatam Rudam Abumtum Ayusham. After Krishna had left the planet, Arjuna was returned to Hastinapur, having failed to protect Krishna's queens, being defeated by what apparently was some thugs along the roadside. He appeared before Yudhishthira with his shoulders sloped, his eyes downcast, looked pale, dispirited, not well. And Yudhishthira says, brother, what's wrong? And Arjuna says, Krishna's gone. Krishna's gone. I am the same Arjuna. And I have the same bow. And I drive the same chariot. Tavai dano sa ishaba sarata haste saham rupataya sama anamanti. I am the same Arjuna with the same bow and the same chariot that defeated the demigods headed by Indra himself. The same one who went under the ocean and defeated a race of Danavars. Same one who defeated all the Kauravas not once, but twice, once in the kingdom of Bharata, second time at Kurukshetra, and yet in the absence of Lord Krishna, everything has become zero. Null, and I could not even defeat some cheap highwaymen on the way here. This is the life. It is just the life of my life, the life of my soul has now left me, and I haven't got any of my former glory, any of my former excitement. Then we need to follow the story along to see how it was that Arjuna resolved this deep, deep despair, this feeling of nothingness, of incapability, of unworthiness. Desha kala tiyuktani ritapashmaharatishmara govinda biritanicha. Gajendra has gone in a moment from thinking himself a big shot, very influential person, a king, a father, a husband, a Zion, a demigod, in fact, to now he's gone to the depths of depression. Over 1,000 years, his strength has ebbed, his consciousness, his confidence has drained like water from a cracked pot. At this point, he's been divested of every single false pretense. He is unable anymore to rely on the false pillars of material strength and influence and bodily beauty. It's all been taken away from him by the mercy of the Lord. And instead, he's throwing himself on the mercy of the Lord, realizing that there is only Krishna. I am only Krishna in his separated, expanded energy. I'm not this flesh. I'm not this eyes. I'm not this hand. I'm not this arm. I'm not this gender. I'm not this nationality. I'm not this caste. I'm not this vocation. I am Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhu Kavanai Shravanadi Sudhiti Karyoda. I'm eternal servant of Krishna. And so he says, Lord, you are the only one, the only protector, the only seer, the only power, the only one worth taking shelter of in all of this material world. So please protect me. Please give me your mercy. Please do not withhold your mercy from me, because right now, your mercy is the only thing worth having. It was always the case, but right now, I recognize it. It's become painfully plain to me that I need to get back home, back to God. Well, here's Gajendra, big, strong body, wives, children, living on the heavenly planets. He's practically an intimate of the demigods. He's on a first name basis with Kuvera, Indra. He sees them probably on a daily basis. They come to the Kruta mountain with their wives and their children to picnic and to dance and to sport. And Gajendra's a lifelong resident there. So everybody says, hi, Gajendra, how you doing? How's the wife? How's the kid? He says, hi, Indra, hi, Varuna. He thinks he's part of that high society. I remember back when I was a kid, and this is just a kid's impression. That's all. I'm just sharing something that popped into my mind. We lived in this little town in Pennsylvania. It was my mother, my father, and my brother, my younger brother and I. And my dad his father was a lawyer, quite an important person. My mother's father was Westmoreland County commissioner there in Western Pennsylvania. So he was pretty influential. But my parents, they didn't have that level of stature. My father worked as a salesman at Westinghouse Air Brake in Wilberdine, suburb of Pittsburgh. He hadn't been able to finish college because World War II broke out. His older brother, Kay, and his older sister, Kay, and brother Jim had finished college. And she went on to become a very well-known psychologist with a PhD. And his brother Jim got a lifelong job as an attorney for Mellon Bank, and he was quite prosperous. But the timing was wrong for Dad, the third child, because World War II came along and he didn't have a college degree. So he wasn't, in the material estimation, on an upper rung of the social ladder. Now he inherited a house, which my great-great-grandmother left to him. And it was a Revolutionary era house built in 1788, and he renovated it. It was in this little town called Stallstown in Pennsylvania, probably about 200 people. And initially went to the Presbyterian church there locally. I can remember as a small kid going to the Presbyterian church. Now, at some point, my father realized that we were in the Ligonier Valley. His brother, remember, works for the Mellon Bank, and the Mellons have their residence right there in that valley. There's the famous private exclusive country club called Rolling Rock, where they have thoroughbred racehorses and trout streams, and huge mansions surround that. So at some point, my father switches us from the plebeian Presbyterian church to the blue-blooded Episcopal church, which is called St. Michael's of the Valley. He discerns at some point that all of the Mellons and the Rockefellers, the owners of United States Steel, the owners of Mellon Bank, all these multi-billionaires, they attend the Church of St. Michael's. And it's open enrollment. Nobody's prohibited. It's not like a private club or anything. So Dad starts going to the St. Michael's Church, and he starts getting on a first name basis with all these blue bloods. And we grow up going to a private school, elementary school, a private school, just to keep up with the Joneses, keep up with the Mellons and the Fairfield. I'm not making any value judgments. It was a more educated class of people. Um, a lot of my use, vocabulary, articulation all comes from having hung out with people that know how to express themselves with the right word and the right phrases and had the good education for that. I'm not apologizing for that. I'm not apologizing for my father. But although he wasn't a college graduate, because of the place where he lived, he got on a first name basis with some of the richest people in the country. And they also appreciated him and they liked him as well. Similarly, Gajendra's body, the elephant's body, is not the most high class body, but he was living on the heavenly planets because of his past credits as a devotee of Krishna. So he became familiar with Indra, Varuna, Char, and all the demigods. They're all on a first name basis. And yet, in the time when his life was on the line, none of the demigods were able to help him. They didn't want to get involved. They saw the water, they saw the foam, they saw this crocodile, which was as big as an island. For Gajendra, the king of the elephants, to be taken down, we haven't said much about this. We'll get to this later on. You know that this is not an ordinary crocodile. No ordinary crocodile would try to take down Gajendra, the king of the elephants. This is a special crocodile who is equally powerful as Gajendra. Otherwise, all the other crocodiles would go skittering away when Gajendra came to the edge of the river. None of the demigods dared to get involved. There might be other crocodiles there. What if that crocodile let go of Gajendra's leg and grabbed my leg? So they're saying, it's okay. It's okay. I wish you well, but I'm going to keep my distance. All of that served to pinpoint the consciousness of Gajendra, to make him clearly visualize that which is temporary, that those who are themselves already under the yoke of death, and he who never dies, ajo pishana vyayat mahabhutanam. Although you're unborn and your body never deteriorates, you descend from time to time in this material. Because of the sincerity, because of the helpless cry of Gajendra, that with his hands, so to speak, he was unable to offer folded obeisances, but he offered obeisances as best he could, considering his body, by plucking the lotus flower and offering it with his trunk, accompanied by beautiful prayers which he composed from his past life. And that was enough, that the Lord appeared directly and personally on Garuda. He sheared the crocodile's head from his body with his chakra. And when the reptile lay dead and Gajendra was shed of his dread, he resumed the thread of his prayers and said, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We'll stop there. Thank you all for joining us on Motivational Monday. Jai, Gajendra. Patricia, yes, windows of the soul, the eyes. The eyes don't see what the soul sees through the eyes of the world. And the eyes are not, we don't manufacture. The eyes are not created in the laboratory. Darwin admitted, the evolutionist, the father of evolutionary theory, he admitted there's no way the eyes could have evolved. There's no way that matter could have organized itself into such a highly state of organization that you get an eye. There are too many moving parts. There are too many variables. You can shuffle all the different elements for millions of years and millions of comments, and you'll never get an eye. And after all of that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, scientists, even if you got the eye, it would not be able to see were it not for the soul created by God inside the body. So good point, Patricia. Eyes don't see. Anjali, the queen of comments, sums everything up by writing in the comments section, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Anjali, I'm supposed to be out there next Saturday in Phoenix for the Rath Yacht. I kind of maneuvered myself an invitation. So I'm going to be there with some songs, maybe the Gajendra song, amongst others. Brent, you are better within the prison bars if a saint blesses you to stay as you are. Getting out is materially fine, but conscious association for the pure devotee is transcendentally divine. I tell you, I just get so tickled. It's one thing for me to, share, articulate, speak, but you can't imagine how gratified I am when someone takes what I've said and further beautifies it and refines it and then gives it back in poetic form in a comment. Thank you. Thank you for all of you who do that. Natasha, Shukshma does it on occasion. Brent does it with regularity. Of course, Rob started the whole thing off. Once again, Brent writes, you are better within the prison bars if a saint blesses you to stay as you are. Getting out is materially fine, but conscious association for the pure devotee is transcendently divine. Don't you just love that? Speaking of hobnobbing with educated people, Brent obviously has a college education, post-college, graduate school. A new name here, Hari Buddhi Das, who says Jai. Hari Buddhi Das. Thanks for joining us, Hari Buddhi Das. I think I'm seeing a picture of him here with, maybe it's a Nudima. I don't want to click on your name because I think it might take me away. I'll check you out later. But thanks for joining us. Divya Joshi, our old friend, once more has jumped aboard. Bye Bobby says Ekadasi. Today is Ekadasi. We're refraining from grains and beans. Namarita offers his obeisances, and Bye Bobby, his hands, gives the Anjali Mudra emoji 3 times over. Namaste, namaste, namaste. What Gajendra could only do with his trunk and a lotus flower. And Brent. So that's it. Nice comment, one poem. So now we go to Rob, who's the inspiration for all this poetry. Were you able to compose a few things this morning, Rob?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you for the class this morning.
Excellent. I'm all ears. Did you mute yourself by accident? Did I mute you by accident?
Can you hear me now, Prabhuji?
Yes, you came back.
Okay. Yeah, I think I accidentally muted myself.
Okay.
Okay. You are a winner, even if pure chanting is just a glimmer.
Yeah, nice.
If all you see is the pure devotee, then you will be free. Don't waste the opportunity to associate with a devotee.
True.
Seek the diamonds and let go of glass. Secure your future and clear away the past.
Nice.
Let's see here. Krishna is the supreme in all that is seen.
Yes, that was our theme today.
Krishna is the ultimate seer. We are the seen. Will you be humble or will you preen? I am just zeros, but Krishna is one. By myself, I'm nothing, but with him, a million.
Nice. Very nice.
Haribol.
Can you say the first one again once more?
You're a winner, even if pure chanting is just a glimmer.
Yeah, that's a paraphrase from Haridas Thakur. Nice point. Okay, we got off to a good start. We've got 2 more days. Transcendental Tuesday, Wisdom Wednesday. Weekend I'll be in Phoenix. Should have recovered sufficiently from the travel to be able to be with you Monday morning, but we'll see how that goes. In any case, look forward to rejoining you tomorrow morning for Transcendental Tuesday, followed by Wisdom Wednesday. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare.